Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming again today. Today, we're going to talk about a subject that is stressful for lots of folks, but it also offers tremendous spiritual lessons, and that's dealing with weight issues. It's a big subject in our culture, isn't it? Especially for women. There's tremendous cultural pressure to conform to a particular standard. You're supposed to look like a teenage model or a movie star. And if you don't, you feel like you're a failure, you're unattractive. And this is all learned. This has nothing to do with who we are as spiritual beings. So it'll be my goal to bring us back to a spiritual awareness that gives us a new perspective on physical weight that heals us. And I've given this topic lots of thought since I decided to do it. And I think I'm going to break this up into two pieces. I'll do half this week and then half next week because I don't want to rush and I want to give the subject all the attention it deserves. So I've come up with 10 tips on healing weight issues. I'll give you 5 this week and then 5 next week. The first one is to love yourself and your body just as you are. I know it's easier said than done, but it's really the key. What you resist expands and persists, and maybe in terms of weight, that's a very literal aphorism. Because whenever you fight something, whenever you hate something, it grows in your consciousness and also grows in manifestation. So when you look in the mirror and you say, oh, my butt is so big, or my thighs are so big, or my belly's big, that resistance actually anchors that experience in your subconscious. So at some point we have to shift our vision and start seeing beauty and enoughness and attractiveness right where you are. You know, the irony is that you have to love yourself with your weight before you can lose the weight. It sounds ironic, doesn't it? But it's true that the vision you use of how you see yourself is the determining factor in the physical results you manifest. So, you know, I work with lots of women in my workshops, and so many of them think they're overweight. And maybe they are clinically, but maybe they're not clinically. I remember there was this one woman in a big island of Hawaii, and she worked in this health food restaurant. And she was just so gorgeous from a cultural standpoint. She could have been a model. She was so healthy and radiant. And she came to my workshop and she said, "Oh, I just hate my belly." I thought, "Are you serious?" And there's something in the human psyche that finds things to not like about us. It's a propensity to see the dark side. And in a way, if you have weight issues or weight judgments, it's partly about the physical aspects of your life, but it's mostly about self-judgment. We can reframe your whole attitude toward weight as an exercise in releasing self-judgments. We could all use that, regardless if it's a weight issue, any kind of issue. So what if you have judgments about your weight, what if this were your moment of opportunity to break a lifetime habit of self-judgment and self-criticism or even self-hatred? You know, your weight is your blessing to go to a new state of consciousness. Thank you, God, for allowing me to use this to change my mind about myself. What if this were all just a big opportunity to fall in love with myself just as I am? I'm going to read you a beautiful quote at the end of today's message. But self-acceptance, self-honoring, self-nurturing, kindness to self, I mean, these are universal spiritual lessons. There's a wonderful Course in Miracles lesson that says, I will not hurt myself again today. I will not hurt myself again today. And the hurting myself is the beating myself up for anything. It doesn't have to be weight. So eventually every soul has to come around to self-love. That's the big lesson of all of life for all of us. If we could just fall in love with ourselves, with our gender and our age and our weight and our marital status and our history and our finances and our work and the world we live in, that shift of consciousness is the hugest shift of our lifetime. So thank you, God, for letting me practice self-love using my weight as a fulcrum. It's really not my weight that bothers me. It's my perception of my weight. And A Course in Miracles tells us that a miracle is a shift in perception. And so if you shift your perception about your weight, you've created a miracle. So you move from fear to love. The Course tells us there's only two emotions in all of life. One is fear and one is love. And if you're upset about your weight, then you're in fear. And if you find kindness to yourself about your weight, then you've fallen in love. You've risen in love. We're tired of falling in love, aren't we? It's time to rise in love, isn't it? So my second tip is to identify with your spirit more than your body. We are spiritual beings at our core. And spirit has no weight. You can't put spirit on a scale and see a number. So if you remember, I am an eternal, weightless, limitless, gorgeous, amazing, empowered person. Well, now you're getting somewhere, because those are all the attributes of spirit, of a spiritual being. And A Course in Miracles also tells us, identify only with the attributes of God. Everything that God is, you are. Everything God is not, you are not. Could God be overweight? No, it's impossible. God is spirit, God is energy, God does not have pounds, God does not have a body. God is eternally wonderful and lovable. So, as an expression of God, as a divine being, you are eternally wonderful and lovable and attractive and absolutely perfect, just as you are, regardless of whatever's happening in your physical body. Your physical body is really an afterthought in terms of your identity. Okay. And now we're getting into some real juicy stuff here. It's all juicy, but this is really where the rubber meets the road, we'll say. So you want to look at weight-related emotions, because a lot of weight is a result of emotional upset. If you have put on weight, the most important question to ask is, what was going on in your life when you put on the weight? Usually it was a divorce, the death of someone you loved. Maybe as a child you moved around a lot. Maybe you were bullied as a child or an adult. You experienced some kind of abuse. And so physical weight is a protection. It's a reserve against famine, so to speak. Many Jewish people after World War II valued children, chubby children, because they had gone through such horrors with the Nazi Holocaust, and they saw their families die of pretty much starvation in many ways, that to have a healthy child that was even overweight physically. That was really healthy. I was kind of overweight as a child, and I remember some of my parents' friends coming to me, pinching my cheek, and, oh, he's so healthy. You're so blessed to have a healthy child. So they equated weight with health and well-being. And so, in a way, extra weight of any kind is kind of it's a grounding. If you have lots of emotions that are way out there, the weight grounds you, and it kind of earthens you, so to speak. And there's always an emotional component to overweight. And if you can, not that you are overweight, but if you think you are, you might want to look at this. And so the question to ask is, what was going on in my life when I put on the weight? And if you're honest, it was usually some emotional challenge or even trauma. And the question is, how did I deal with those emotions? And if they were especially painful, you may have decided you needed to buffer yourself. Extra weight is a kind of a buffer. So I felt that I could buffer myself from pain or threat or trauma by having this extra weight. There's a little more between me and the external world that was threatening me. So the next question is, okay, is there another way I could have dealt with that energy spiritually rather than physically, by working with it, by processing the pain, by doing some kind of therapy, do some kind of healing, some kind of spiritual work, where I would take those emotions that were so stressful because I was being hurt by the outer world in my perception, and I would not have to use weight as a way to protect myself or buffer myself. And I promise you, if this is still going on for you, that if you can process those emotions in a healthy, mature way, the weight will most likely naturally dissipate, because you no longer have a sense of a need for extra buffering or reserve against famine, spiritually speaking, or protection. It's a very interesting thing that when you heal your mind, your body tends to line up. You may not even need to lose any physical weight. We'll talk about this in the next week's session. You may need just to find your happy weight, whatever that is, higher or lower than the medical chart says. That's just very arbitrary. But you want to address your weight-related emotions. And that's really the key. There's so many diets, and they all contradict each other. If you've dieted, you know that there are 100 books on the bookshelf, and they all say different things. And one is a blood type, and one is a vegetarian, one is ketones, and one is Atkins. I don't know, and they all work for somebody, and they all have testimonials for somebody. But with most people, if you attempt to manage your weight physically only, you will not succeed. I mean, it's always a good idea to eat right. It's always good to drink a lot of water. It's always a good idea to exercise. I mean, you can't go wrong doing those things no matter what weight you are. But most people who attempt to manage their weight by only managing their diet tend to yo-yo. They will lose weight and gain it, lose weight and gain, lose weight again. And it's rare that somebody creates a lifetime of satisfactory weight control by dieting only. Even the dieting systems will tell you this. I hope they will. Because if it's an emotion that's fueling the weight, unless you deal with the weight that's the emotion that's fueling the weight will come and go and come and go and come up. So we are spiritual beings, and we have to work from the inside out. That we cannot, this is not just for weight, it's for money or family or it's anything, because the physical is the expression of the mental, emotional, and spiritual. The physical is not causative. The physical is an effect. So in order to change the effect, you have to go to the cause. And the cause is always mind and emotions and spirit. So any effective weight management program has to go within to the source of the weight. And then that's a real healing. Otherwise, just putting Band-Aids on and moving stuff around. Some people are affected by managing a diet, but there's always another component. They have to be so motivated to have a healthy body. But that internal motivation to have the healthy body is what makes the physical weight management effective. Okay? Now, there's another layer to this. This is really interesting stuff. You see, it goes very deep. It's not just calories. It's what's going on inside. So this is the big question. This is a really big, challenging question, but it's actually the best one you could ask yourself. You could ask yourself, how do you believe your weight situation serves you? There's a teacher named Bashar, and he says, whenever you have a negative situation or pattern, the question to ask is, why do you continue to do the behavior, the pattern that you say you do not prefer? Because behind every action, there's a choice. We always, as human beings, we only do things that we think are going to serve us. Now, sometimes that service is functional, and sometimes it's dysfunctional. Sometimes we continue with habits or patterns that are addictions, and on a subconscious level, we believe it's serving us, but not really, not in the big picture, not really help. Any addiction is not really helping us in the big picture. It helps us the moment when we get the quick hit of the sugar or the drug or the sex or the fame or whatever. It's a quick fix, but in the big picture, it's not truly serving us, because what we really want is a deeper love and a deeper soul satisfaction. So let me give you a really good example. So a number of years ago, a woman called into my radio show, and she said, a few years ago, I had a very bad divorce. And since that time, I've put on a bunch of weight, and I can't seem to lose it. I've tried diet, I've tried exercise, and I take a little bit off, but I can't really lose what I want to lose. So I asked her a very direct question. I asked her, do you believe there's some benefit? Are you perceiving some benefit in holding on to this weight? And she's very honest. I had to respect her. She said, well, my marriage ended so badly, and I can't imagine getting involved with a man again at this point. And so perhaps, on some level, I believe that the weight is making me less attractive to men, and I won't have to deal with a man in my life. I said, thank you very much for your deep honesty. That was powerful. The next question was equally important. I said, is there a way you can say no to men, if that's your choice, without needing your weight to say no for you? And we got into a really good discussion. It was a really excellent coaching session. So she needed to find the clarity and directness to say no to men, if that was her choice, without needing her weight to do it for her. That was a very healthy, we went through a very healthy progression on that. She could have just said, no, I'm not dating, I'm not interested in a relationship at this time, and that would have done it. So if you're carrying weight that is more than you want, or maybe less than you want, maybe you'd like to gain weight, maybe you're on the other side of the spectrum, ask yourself, is there some way that I perceive that my weight, whatever it is, more or less, is serving me? And is there a way I could make statements to the world where I would not need my weight to make a statement for me? It's a good question. It's really worth looking into. You have to peel away some layers. But I promise you, if you're sincere, you're going to find some pretty powerful answers in there. And finally, for today, you can take a holistic approach and look at other areas of your life besides weight that are stressful to you. So, if you're having challenges in your marriage or your work or your finances or your family of origin or your spiritual path, if sometimes people translate stress from one area into another area, and the stress you perceive in that situation that seems to be unrelated to weight ends up in the weight zone because it's a form of stress that you haven't dealt with head on. So if you're willing to look at all areas of your life, we're holistic beings. You cannot separate your finances out from your weight. You cannot separate your job out from your relationships. It's all connected because it's your consciousness that is playing itself out in many different directions. And usually if you have a core issue that's painful or dysfunctional or stressful, that core issue will pop up in different zones of your life. They're not really different because you're just expressing a core issue that's popping up in different ways. So this is why it's very healthy to address any area of your life that feels bad. It could be you hate to go into your job every day. Maybe it's not a job you believe in. Maybe you're concerned about the environment. Maybe you're concerned about the health of the world and all kinds of issues that could be bugging you. Maybe you're angry at politics. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that could be bugging you, but they're all connected to your emotional well-being, and that emotional well-being is often connected to weight issues. So I've said a lot, and I know there's a lot to chew on, and I think if any of this speaks to you, then take that one angle and work with it and unravel it. So we're talking partly about controlling your physical weight, but we're talking mostly about controlling your mental weight, so to speak. There was a Zen monk who said, "You have no idea the weight you've been carrying until you let it go." And he wasn't really talking about physical weight. He was talking about the psychic burden that you're carrying. We all carry psychic burdens. We all feel weighed down by something. And we don't realize the toll it's taking while we're carrying it. And we finally let it go somehow, somewhere, we go, oh my God, I can't believe I carried that around for so long. That was so hard. Whew, if I realized what a toll it was taking, I would have dealt with it earlier and more directly. So we're really talking about unburdening yourself mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, which plays out eventually in having a healthy, happy physical weight. So let me read you that quote I promised you at the beginning. It's so potent that I want to end with it. And it comes from a play by Arthur Miller called After the Fall. And here's what one of the characters said. The character said, "I dreamed I had a child, and even in the dream, I saw it was my life. And it was an idiot. And I ran away." We're all idiots in some way or another. I'm not just talking about weight, but we all do things that we judge against. We all do things that we think are unspiritual, unkind. We all do things that we think hurt ourselves or others. We all have a part of our mind that feels like an idiot, do we not? And it was an idiot, and I ran away. Back to the character. But it always crept into my lap again. It clutched at my clothes. Until I thought, if I could kiss it, whatever in it was my own, perhaps I could sleep. And I bent to its broken face, and it was horrible. But I kissed it. I think one must finally take one's life in one's arms. I think one must finally take one's life in one's arms. And so physical weight is one thing we could kiss, some self-judgment that keeps tugging at our clothes, saying, please deal with me, pay attention to me, love me, accept me as I am. Just let me be as I am, whatever weight I am, whatever number the scale shows. And that embracing, that accepting, that pure love of self, irrespective of physical appearances, is the healing of a lifetime. And then I could sleep.